We're going to cover three things in this episode of TechFocus. So number one, we're going to cover what was announced in the Pixel December feature drop. Number two, we're going to cover my thoughts on this release and what it potentially means for users of non-Pro Pixel phones going forward. And thirdly, we're going to cover the problem with exclusivity of features between the regular and Pro Pixel, as well as between the US and the rest of the world. If you're new here, for context, I'm a Pixel 8 owner and I'm also from the UK. So I'm going to be covering this from that angle and talking about what features we've got and also what features we're also missing out on. So without further ado, let's crack on. So first of all, we're going to cover what was announced in the Pixel December feature drop, and I'm just going to cover the updates for the normal Pixel phones, but there are also a few updates for the Pixel Fold, Pixel Tablet, and Pixel Watches that I'm not going to cover here. Also, I want to preface this with the fact that Google recently announced their new AI model, Gemini, which is multimodal and it's pretty exciting. So being multimodal means it isn't just limited to text input, but can also take inputs from things like images and video, which is pretty cool. What's important to these announcements is that Gemini comes in three models. So on the website, it kind of shows this. We've got the Ultra model, which is their largest model, their most capable model. And this is the only one that's multimodal, whereas you've got Gemini Pro, which is the intermediate model. And this is the one that's now behind Bard. And I've noticed a massive improvement of how Bard is functioning now, and Bard's looking like a really good competitor to something like ChatGPT now. And then finally we have Gemini Nano, which is their smallest, their most efficient model that can run on-device tasks, especially on smaller devices like smartphones, which is really cool. And the key announcement here was that with the December feature drop, Gemini Nano is now available on the Pixel 8 Pro, but it's not available on the Pixel 8, unfortunately, which I found really disappointing. But we'll talk a bit more about that later. But first, let's get into the December Pixel feature drop. There were a lot of features announced in this feature drop, including Pixel 8 Pro exclusive features, as well as a load of features that are coming to every Pixel from the Pixel 6 onwards, so any Pixel that has Tensor basically. And this is really exciting, especially for people who have a Pixel 6 or Pixel 7. They get to, breathe a bit more life into their older phone and get some really cool new features out of it. So let's start with the features that are exclusive to the Pixel 8 Pro. And this starts with Summarize in Recorder, which basically uses Gemini Nano to create summaries of recordings that are made in the Recorder app. And this works similarly to the Summarize for Web Pages feature that is already available on the Pixel 8 and Pixel 8 Pro, admittedly in the US only, but it is already available, where it basically looks at the entire text of your transcript of your recording and summarizes it into a few bullet points. From the examples that I've seen from Google, it seems to always summarize it into 3 bullet points. I'd love to see if they could make that a few more, because if you've got a longer meeting, it would be good to have, maybe 6 or 7, 8 bullet points rather than just 1 or 2, because you're talking about like an hour-long meeting. I can't really summarize that into 3 bullet points. I'm not sure if that's just the examples I've seen have all been 3 bullet points, but if someone has access to this feature, let me know if it does more than 3 bullet points. I'd be really interested to see that. This is cool because it's done on device using Gemini Nano, but it also seems to have some limitations at the moment. So if we go into Android Police, they have reported that Google's Gemini Recorder summaries can't be too long or too short. And by this, they say that the AI won't summarize a recording under 1 minute or over 15 minutes. And it blocks harmful content based on safety features. The aspect about blocking harmful content is fine, that makes sense, but I think the fact that you can only summarize things that are between 1 minute and 15 minutes, at least at the moment, is not great, because I think most people will have meetings that will go on longer than 15 minutes. They'll be somewhere between 20 and an hour, to be honest, realistically. So I'm hoping that improves. It might have already been updated. I'm not sure. I don't have a Pixel 8 Pro, but I think that needs to be updated and needs to be able to summarize longer recordings in the future. So we'll see how that progresses, but that is Summarize in Recorder. So next up, we have Smart Reply in Gboard, which again uses Gemini Nano to basically look at the context of a conversation you're having on your phone with someone else and suggest a few responses based on the tone of the conversation. It was what was being said in the conversation. There's a few caveats to this. It's currently only available in WhatsApp and a couple of other apps that I've actually never heard of. And you also have to enable it in developer options on your Pixel 8 Pro, which means it's kind of half-baked at the moment. It's not fully technically released to everyone yet. And you need to have your keyboard language set to US English. So I think this is quite funny because Google is obviously a US-based company. People in the US apparently hardly ever use WhatsApp. So I'm interested to see how many people will actually make use of this. I think if you actually think about it, there'll probably be countries where it's not native English who have maybe learnt how to speak English through learning US English, who actually possibly use that on their phone and use WhatsApp already. They might be the people who are actually going to be using this. But I think it won't be necessarily a fully fledged feature until it's available either system-wide or in larger variety of messaging apps that more people use, I think. Next, we have Video Boost for Night Sight. And I know this is a feature that a lot of Pixel 8 Pro users have been waiting for, that sends video out to the cloud and basically enhances the color, the lighting, the stabilization, and the graininess of that video. So from what I've seen in the videos of this so far, it doesn't seem to have that much of an effect on videos that are well lit, so videos shot during the daytime in good lighting conditions. But in those conditions, it does seem to improve the stabilization fundamentally quite a lot. Whereas the night sight video seems to make a really big difference. So it seems that a lot of detail in the standard video is lost in the shadows when you're shooting at night. Whereas night sight video brings out all of that detail and stuff you couldn't see in the original video before, which is really cool. It also takes away a lot of the noise in the image as well and makes it look really clean, which is nice. So I think the night sight video is going to be the big part of this release and this feature. The only problem is that file sizes seem to be quite big from what I saw in the videos as well, so you might need a really expensive Google One subscription to make sure that you can store all of this video if you're planning on shooting a lot of this. But it doesn't matter to me because I haven't got a Pixel 8 Pro, so there is that we can't actually access this on the Pixel 8, even though it seems to be that the majority of the processing is going to be done in the cloud. This is just, again, software blocking of features by Google. Makes sense, but at the same time, it's not ideal. But you can see in the examples on the website, if you're listening on audio, basically you've got a pretty good looking bit of video already on the left hand side. This is shot during the day as well. So on the right, you've got the video boost version, and to me, it just looks like it's brightened the image and there's a little bit more dynamic range, but the one on the left still looks pretty good. So again, like I said, I don't think it's going to make a massive amount of difference when it comes to well-lit situations, but it's going to be very good for shooting at night with this. Moving on, and we have our first feature that is a Pixel 8 and Pixel 8 Pro exclusive. So we do actually get night sight and time-lapse on our Pixel 8s now. And I should have mentioned before, I have actually received the update now, so I've had a chance to use a few of these features. Night sight and time-lapse isn't one of the ones I've tried yet because I've actually never shot a time-lapse on my Pixel 8 yet. I'm not sure how much use I'll get out of this, but it's nice to have this feature if I do want to shoot a nighttime time-lapse at some point. Basically, this is what it says on the tin. It's using the night sight technology that we already have in night sight for just single photos and applying that to time lapses. Your time lapses at night should look a lot cleaner, they should look a lot brighter, and there should be a lot more detail in the shadows and all of the image. The example on Google's website is this kind of cityscape where it's quite dark on the left hand side, there's a lot more detail on the right hand side, and this basically just applies to time lapse. They do say that you have to have it on a tripod to use this, and that's fine, but nice little added feature that might come in useful at some point if I want to use that for shooting like a nightscape of Edinburgh, for example. So let's move on to the features now that are available to all Pixels after the Pixel 6, and this starts with portrait light. This is kind of gimmicky in my opinion, but let's give it a go on the phone and I'll show you how it works. So I can take a selfie of myself, and for audio listeners I will try and describe this. I've taken a selfie, and basically I go into the Photos app and I can go to the edit page, and what this will do is it'll allow me to actually go to my tools in the bottom of the phone, and you've got this new option for portrait light. The portrait light gives you a couple of options, so it allows you to balance the light. It's got the balance light option and add light option. Balance light basically allows you to balance the light on both sides of your face if you want to make the light a lot flatter on your face, and the add light feature actually allows you to pick a point and add a light source from that point on the picture. So basically, if I put it on the left side of my face, for example, it adds light to that side of the page. And for both of these, the balance light and add light option, you have a slider to between 0 and 100 to decide how much light you want to add. So nice little feature. It could be really useful for someone who uses, who takes selfies quite a lot, but for me, I'm not that man. Next up, we have some upgrades to photo Unblur, and Google basically claims that it's now better at sharpening images of dogs and cats. Dogs and cats love to move around quite fast, so it's going to be hard to get a non-blurry image of them in a lot of cases. So to have photo Unblur to allow you to kind of make those images look a bit better is going to be quite nice. However, it's only on dogs and cats, so if you've got any other sort of pet, then this isn't really going to help you. So I've got rabbits, and they're still going to be zooming around the garden, just complete blurs as I take pictures of them. So not great for me, but great for anyone who has dogs and cats. Next up is a feature that I'm probably most excited about, and that is the fact you can now use your Pixel as a webcam, which is a really simple but really cool feature. And it means that you're getting more use out of these really good cameras on the back here, and actually on the front. You can use both of them. Basically, you just connect it up via USB-C to your computer, and then you get the option to change it from, charging, data transfer to a webcam. So as long as you select the webcam option, it'll allow you to do this. And I'm going to actually do this live just now so we can see how it looks. So once we connected it via USB-C, we can then go into our USB options and click on them. And we've got our various options, including file transfer, USB tethering, etc. But now we've got the webcam option here. So we click on that. This now activates this as a webcam. You can see here, if you go up into your settings on your Mac, go to in photo booth and you select the camera, make sure you've got your Android webcam selected, which is the option. And then we can actually go onto our settings in the phone and we can preview what it looks like on the phone as well. And when we got it on this preview, we can select between our ultra wide and our main camera, and we can also go to 2x zoom if we wanted to. If I mount this on my GorillaPod and we set this up, it actually gives you some really good quality webcam. And if you are using any standard webcam that's built into a laptop, this is going to look far better. So anyone who wants to kind of up the look of how their video calls look, this is such a great option for a phone that you've already got to make it look a lot better. And as you can see here, if you're watching on the video version, it just looks really crisp, looks really clear, and in my opinion, it's a really nice little feature upgrade that we're getting here. One thing I like about this is the intentionality of this. So you have to plug it in, you have to select the webcam option to use it. Whereas with continuity camera on iPhones, which basically allows you to use your iPhone as a wireless webcam for your Mac, it can activate accidentally when you don't actually want to use it, when you're on a call. This is something I heard on the Waveform podcast. So Waveform podcast is by Marques Brownlee, massive tech YouTuber on YouTube if you've never heard of him. He said that it's often activated in his pocket with the iPhone, and then you're wondering why your video is not working for a second until you work out that it's activated continuity camera. So that's not something that will happen with this. You have to be quite intentional to use it, and I like that feature a lot. So really underrated feature, really simple feature, and I'm really glad it's another use that we can use for our Pixel cameras, which are fantastic. Next, we have the new Clean feature, which allows you to remove stains or imperfections from a document that you've scanned using your Pixel's camera. And I've actually already made use of this at work with a really scrunched up document that I had where I needed to kind of spread this out and actually scan it and send it over to someone. Even after straightening it out, it was still super creased, and this got in the way of when you scanned it, there was a load of shadows and things on it. Using the Clean feature, I managed to actually clean this up really substantially, and it looked really good. It can work really well in a lot of situations, but a couple of things I figured out with this was that it works really well on printed text. Anything that is predictable, that you can actually predict as to what it should actually look like actual printed fonts, that's fine. Whereas anything that's handwritten, where it can't accurately predict what it should look like, it can't actually reproduce that and make it look good. It'll just kind of get rid of that. It thinks it's part of the imperfection on a document, basically. And things like signatures, obviously you can't draw over them because it will mess up the signature and it won't be real to life. So if you've got any signatures, you can't get rid of any imperfections that are over the signature, unfortunately. And another thing is that if you have, black printed font on a white paper and you have a black smear over the font, it kind of gets confused between the font and what's the smear because they're both the same color. So anything that's like the same color, the imperfections, as the actual stuff that you're trying to recover, it's not going to work very well for that. But in Google's example, they have a receipt with black text on it that has a brown stain on it, and I'm hoping this is coffee, but that's more contrasty. And in situations like that where you have different colors, the imperfection is a different color than the actual text of the document, it seems to be able to get rid of that pretty well. So just bear that in mind when you're using this. But a nice little feature, again, nice feature that Google's added here that I could actually use quite a lot. The next two features are available on the Pixel 5a 5G version all the way up to the Pixel 8 Pro. And these are, first of all, passkeys in Google Password Manager and repair mode. So with passkeys in Google Password Manager, you can now add passkeys into your Google Password Manager with Pixel, which is cool. And I'll admit, I didn't actually know what passkeys were until I kind of looked into this for when I was doing some research for this podcast episode, but they are a much more secure on-device method of signing into a specific service, and are expected to replace passwords in the future. There's a good video on the Chrome for Developers YouTube channel that explains passkeys in under 4 minutes. So I'll link this in the description on YouTube and in the show notes for audio listeners if you want to check it out. I'd recommend watching it. It's just a really simple video that kind of explains what they are and how they work and how they differ from passwords, for example. Next up is repair mode, and this is going to be great if you ever have to send your phone away to be repaired. Because it creates a clean Android OS installation in a dedicated secure partition, separating your personal data and settings from the standard system partition. And what this means is basically that your personal data is inaccessible to anyone who's working on the phone, but they can still test the phone in a basically simplified version of Android OS to make sure that everything's running correctly. This is similar to Samsung's maintenance mode that they've had on their phones for a little while, and it's good to see Google adding something similar, because it means you can be more confident when you send your phone away from repair that whoever's repairing it, if they're a bad actor, they're not going to be able to access any of your personal data. And this is really important because in the past we'd just send it away and we'd have to give someone our passcode to be able to allow them in to do some tests on the phone. But we're not going to have to do that anymore, which is nice. So a really nice quality of life feature that are being added by Google here. So we have 4 more features to cover, and first of all we have smarter replies in call screen. And call screen is a feature that's been around for a little while now, and it basically allows you to get your Google Assistant to answer the phone for you, and you can see what's happening on screen as it transcribes what's being said on the phone. So you can make sure that it's not basically a scam caller, and if it is, you can just hang up, which is great. Whereas with this, it's now giving you smarter replies, so it's allowing you to, it gives you contextual replies. The example that's given on Google's website is someone being called to confirm an appointment for tomorrow. Google Assistant pops up with a few different options here, so confirm, cancel appointment, or a few other options there. And it intelligently looks at what's being said by the person on the other end of the phone and tries to give contextual replies that make sense for that, either yes or no, and confirm, cancel appointment, etc. So this is a nice little quality of life feature. But again, this is something that's only available in English and in the US. So in the UK, I'm not getting any use of this, and anywhere else in the world, no one's getting used to this. Only US-based people who have Pixels are going to be able to use this. Next up, we have the Recorder app now transcribes in 28 new languages. So in contrast to the last one, this isn't limited to the US. This is quite a global feature. So nice to see that from Google, and hopefully they'll add more languages as they go forward. But 28 new languages is massive, so going to be useful for a lot more people now. So the second last feature here is that Direct My Call and Hold For Me are now available in the UK. And Direct My Call allows you to quickly select from the different numbered options that are usually listed out on a call when you're trying to get to speak to like a support operator. And instead you're able to see these on the screen and quickly select which one you want from the list, which will make that whole process of going through that tree of decisions a lot quicker. Hold For Me allows you to let Google Assistant wait on hold for you while you wait for a human to come back to the phone, which is nice as well, and it'll basically notify you when the human comes back to the phone and you can speak to someone then. So you're not wasting time just sitting around listening to awful hold music, basically, which is nice. These are both really useful features, and it's good to see them available in new countries, but it would be nice to see them available in more countries. So hopefully we get to see these kind of features spreading to more countries as we go further into the future. And finally, we've got weather and clock all in one, which is honestly a bit of a random one. Did anyone ask for this? I'm not sure, but it basically means that when your alarm goes off, it gives you a screen that tells you what the weather is going to be like. And nice little quality of life feature again. It's nice to see that when you wake up and see what the weather's going to be like. Sometimes it can be good when it's going to be a nice weather, and most of the time in Scotland it's terrible because it tells you it's going to be another day of rain. But it's all good. So a pretty minor update, but it's a nice little feature. So that's a breakdown of all the features that were announced in the December Pixel feature drop. And there's a really good summary of availability per device on the Pixel community webpage, which has a table that shows all of the Pixel phones from the Pixel 8 Pro down to the Pixel tablet, which is obviously not a phone, but announcements were made for that within this announcement as well. And it shows which features are available for which device. So a really nice breakdown there, and I'll link that in the description and the show notes if you do want to have a bit more of a look into that as well. So throughout all of that, we can see that some of the coolest features are unfortunately limited to the Pixel 8 Pro or limited to being US only. And I want to have a chat about this. The Pixel 8 and the Pixel 8 Pro have the same Tensor G3 chip. And the only difference in terms of hardware that could have a meaningful impact here on how software features run is the amount of RAM that these phones have. So the Pixel 8 Pro has 12GB of RAM, whereas the Pixel 8 only has 8GB of RAM. The Pixel 8 Pro has 50% more RAM than the Pixel 8, which is a substantial amount. But the Pixel 8 isn't getting access to Gemini Nano, which I think is really disappointing. There is a chance this is due to the RAM limitations, but I honestly think it's just Google trying to give people another excuse to upsell to their Pixel 8 Pro, because for a lot of people, the hardware differences between these two phones isn't enough to justify that £300 or $300 price difference. I'm not really a fan of software blocking of features in tech in general, as I think you should be able to use the full power of your phone, for example, if it's capable of doing something. However, I do suspect that the Pixel 8 will at least get the AI features that are limited to the Pixel 8 Pro over time, including access to Gemini Nano. Google are probably just currently using this as a sales device to encourage more people to buy the more expensive phone. But if there is a hardware limitation in terms of RAM, in terms of the 8GB of RAM that the Pixel 8 has, then I'd honestly rather that Google just came out and told us that, so that we're not holding out hope for getting this feature later on. My main concern with this is that we'll see more software blocking of features between the regular Pixel and Pixel Pro phones going forward, as hardware differences become smaller and more difficult to justify. This almost feels like the inevitable direction that we're going with tech companies in general, as they search for ways to differentiate their different phones or different products. I understand why they're doing it, but that doesn't mean that I like it. The next thing is the number of features that are limited to being US only. And we already discussed the new call screening features, but there's also Summarize for web pages and proofreading in Gboard. I was pretty gutted about the Summarize for web pages feature not being available, because this is something I could easily see myself using quite a lot. There's three main ways that these are limited in terms of the region, and it's either being limited to only being available in the US, there is certain features that are available to having your phone language set to US English, or there's other features where they're only available in English. And that means that there's millions of people using Pixels in other countries who speak different languages who aren't getting half of the functionality of this phone. Fundamentally, the Pixels are software-first phones, and they're marketed for their excellent exclusive software features, which are really great if you have access to them. But if you don't have access to 70 or 80% of these features, then it just becomes another kind of meh Android phone, which is not great. It does have a great camera, admittedly, and that's kind of, consistent across wherever you buy the Pixel, but this is still a big issue. Let me finish off by saying this is an excellent feature drop, especially if you have an older Pixel 6 or Pixel 7, because it adds a ton of features and it's one of the most fantastic things about being a Pixel user. But as a Pixel 8 owner, I'm left with a slightly bitter taste in my mouth at missing out on Gemini Nano, at least for now, because I think it has some potential for some really game-changing features in the future, as Google possibly creates more efficient models that can do more with less power. For example, it would be so cool to see a summarize feature that could be used with any text at anywhere on your phone. So you can just basically highlight any text and just comes up with a summarize option, and you can summarize that really quickly. That would be awesome. It would save so much time, and it would just allow you to process more stuff really quickly. Or just imagine you receive a super long message from someone and you just tap it and ask your phone to summarize it for you. And then your phone suggests an appropriate and thoughtful response that gives you a starting point to then, reply to that message. And it makes it way quicker, saves you tons of time. But if you also own a Pixel, what are your thoughts on this? If you own a Pixel 8, do you feel the same way as me, or are you just happy to be receiving new features? Let me know in the comments on YouTube. Otherwise, as always, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I'll catch you all in the next video. Cheers.